And we might be live. What's going on? Hmm. Hmm. Well, let's go back because I'm having troubles here. Okay, sorry, I was having a problem. Anyways, good afternoon. This is Wayne Belisle with another Profit Maximizer moment. Sorry for the dead air at the beginning. I couldn't see myself or realize I was on. It never told me live. Anyways, this week we're going to talk about kind of a hard subject for most business owners: how to set up their own personal salary for the founder, for the owner. All right. General rule of thumb: pay yourself enough to live, but leave enough in the business to grow. All right. Now, I'm going to cover this without getting too crazy. 85 to 90% of small businesses are set up as an S corp or a partnership, closer to 95%. So most of what I'm going to talk about right now has to do with them. If you're set up as a traditional old-fashioned C corp, where the corporation pays the tax rather than it being passed through to you as an individual, some of these rules don't apply. You'll need to get with their tax advisor. In that case, you need to set your salary higher to get the profits out, so you eliminate some of the double taxation. But I'm going to assume for this purpose that you're an S corp or a partnership or a sole proprietor. So really, what it comes down to is we want to grow the business, but take enough money out to survive. And to be honest about it, I've seen both errors. Okay. I've seen somebody paying himself way too much as an S Corp. I've seen people not taking any salary at all. All right. Which means they have a problem in their business. Simple as that. If the business can't afford to pay you a fair salary, why do you have the business? Now, I understand as you're growing and taking it off, that's fine. But once you get it to a certain point, you should be paying yourself a salary. Now, the other side of the coin is business is doing well, so I'm going to increase my salary by $100,000. And what I'm basically doing is paying $15,000 more to the IRS for Social Security and Medicare. All right. The income tax is going to be the same, whether I take it out as a salary, as a profit distribution. Here's where the error comes in. When I'm doing a sole proprietor or a partnership or the more predominant S corps, I am taxed on the income when I earn it, whether I take it out or not. When I take the money out, now I'm not taxed a second time. That's where a lot of people have a problem, all right? Because it's technically a distribution of previously taxed income. Nobody ever puts that in the books. We usually just put shareholder draw, okay? So what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do normally is set a salary that's fair so that we get a certain amount and as low as possible so that we don't overpay Social Security and Medicare. Unless we're close to retirement, then you might want to up your salary to maximize in the last 3 or 4 years to increase your Social Security. But let's talk about leave that one aside. If you're in that situation, be sure to talk to your tax provider and see what's the best way to go. So what I like to do is set up a monthly salary that is the lowest I can justify for the tax for that particular client based on the skills required, and then distribute as a shareholder draw a fixed amount every month based on what the owner needs to pay their monthly expenses, personal expenses. All right, this makes it very predictable, keeps spending predictable, and prevents from draining cash. All right, makes budgeting for both the company and the owner um, as easy to plan as possible. Want to set a salary for the owner in the business that the business can comfortably afford, anywhere from 20 to 50% of profit, depending on what kind of business it is. Okay. Um, the next thing to do then is to take profit distributions, all right, as a bonus, but without running it through payroll. You're going to take it out as a distribution to shareholder, and those I would take as after I've taken covered all my operating expenses, taxes, have a reserve, and have growth from growth investments like new equipment and everything. Okay. Make sure, if at all possible, keep your bank accounts separate, your business accounts and your personal accounts. Try not to commingle them, especially if you're not good at your own bookkeeping. Okay. Never treat the business account like a personal wallet. This helps you more clearly see what your cash flow is, profitability, and what you can safely pay yourself. There's a good book out there called Profit First by Mike Boy Michalowicz. Look, Profit First by Mike, and a last name you can't pronounce, Michalowicz. Anyways, I like his idea because what he basically does is, and I've been following it for a while, and I teach my clients. One of the problems is when you're an employee, and only an employee, you don't own a business. Well, you don't have to worry that much about income tax, because if you make $1,000 a week, you're not going to get $1,000 a week. You might get 750 because they take out the Social Security and the withholding. At the end of the year, you file and they give you some of your own money back. Everybody thinks I got a refund. Yeah, you kind of did. Basically, yeah, you let them borrow your money all year. But when you're in business, that's not how it works. Okay. So usually what I would recommend is coming up with a tax account anywhere from 3% to 20%, depending on what type of business you are. And for myself, as a service industry, I usually take 15% of whatever I collected in the prior week or 2 weeks. I did it every 2 weeks when I did payroll. Weekly would probably be better. And I would take that, put it into a tax account. All right. Now, I would then aim for 5 to 10%, depending on the industry, profit, but let's say that's an average. And, tried to keep my operating expenses around 30 to 40%. And that meant I had left over for the owner's pay. If I'm looking at taxes, 15 to 20%. Profit, I want out of the profit, I wanted to try to take 40 to 50% of that profit. All right. That's kind of rough. He goes into it in his book, but the idea of taking the money and sticking it aside for taxes, I talked about that last week, is the idea that you're not surprised at the end, because as business owners, it's just human nature. If it's in the bank account, it must be mine. But if I take it out and put it aside for taxes, what's left is mine. Okay. Um, Now, before you get crazy about profit distributions, I really highly push my clients to have a cash reserve first, which, depending on the business, but I like, general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months. Okay. Why? Well, this protects against seasonality or just downturn in the economy, tariffs, disrupting the disruptions of the chain, of the supply chain, whatever. Having, you know, the owner getting sick. I mean, I've seen that where they had a heart attack and, or something happened, or the spouse got sick or something. And all of a sudden they were working less hours, bringing in less income for 3 to 6 months. So having that reserve works well. Unexpected costs. We all know that. Something breaks at home, breaks in business too. All right. All right. So what am I talking about? You need to have the reserve, and your business needs to have some key metrics in place. Your revenue is growing, profit margins are stable, they're not falling. Matter of fact, hopefully increasing. Cash flow is positive, and your debt is manageable. All right. So when you have all those things in place, now you're able to pay yourself without hurting the business. All right. So what it comes down to, again, what I said at the beginning, pay yourself enough to live on, but leave enough in the business to grow. And that's where you really need to work on your business. I did the 3-day profit challenge, and I'm getting ready to launch our course, our 90-day profit maximizing course, with the idea, and then we're going to do some annual profit planning coaching with some people that want to continue. And that's where we're actually looking at, um, helping you grow a business that allows you to pay yourself what you're worth and sets up the what I've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes, however long. Yeah, right at 10 minutes. Well, I missed the first minute, but the last 9 minutes or so of having your business established so that when you take your money out, it doesn't hurt. This is, understand, this is touching, barely touching the surface. All right. And really look for announcements that we're going to be putting out for the 90-day profit challenge, not profit challenge, profit maximizing course. Really, everybody who's gone through it and faithfully attended every week and did the homework and thought about it and met with me to set what they should have, they did better. Okay. So, hey, until next time, again, this is Wayne Belisle saying, let's make this our most profitable year ever. Have a great weekend and God bless. Thanks. Bye. And I'll see you in church. Take care. Bye.